If the players today had to play with the equipment that she was using back then, I don't think they would have had a chance against Ada.
I was actually looking for some history in Mississauga Golf Club in an old yearbook. And the yearbook is older than 50 years old. I think it's older than me. And I found it online in a library in the UK, of all places.
All opinions and views expressed by the speakers are not representative of views and opinions of RBC Dominion Securities, Inc. All information and opinions provided in this video are in good faith, but without legal responsibility.
And when I went into the book, I really was looking to read about the history of Stanley Thompson, because I didn't know what Stanley Thompson represented in Mississauga Golf Club. And then when I realized that him and his brother, WJ, they were quite an influence here. Obviously, Stanley being an architect and WJ being a famous and successful golfer. Then reading into it, I realized that Ada Mackenzie is literally the founder of women's golf in Canada.
Yeah, we had the Canadian Ladies Golf Association, but they were only running, small events. They were running a Canadian Women's Amateur, and it was like only one event at the time that Ada was playing that they played. So you really had to rely on inter-club, championships or inter-club matches for women to actually, play against one another. It was interesting because Ada was somebody who didn't always just play at a club. She actually traveled overseas and played as well. And I think that at that time period, you're talking about getting on a boat and traveling overseas, and yet she did that. She played in the UK. She went down south and played in the US Women's Amateur event. And so, golf was not just a hobby. It really was her entire life.
Well, and as I understand it, she played quite a bit overseas, and then when she wanted to return back home, I believe after World War II, she wanted to develop the first and only women's only golf club in North America. And as I understand it, which again, I mean, if you could just do the numbers in your mind, she raised $12 million back then.
Yeah, at that time conversion, she had found this piece of property. And a little bit of the backstory that goes along with it is that she was having a hard time finding a tee time. As a woman who was playing golf at an amateur level, they were only letting her play on Saturdays and Sundays. So women weren't allowed to play during the weekdays. And so it was important for her to not only grow the sport, but to grow her own skill, that there was a location that was open to women, that they didn't have a hindrance with tee times, which is why she came up with this idea of building a golf club for women by a woman, which is something really special when you think about it. She was able to raise 300 shares immediately, which was the deposit that was needed to purchase the property in Thornhill. And then she had to get, somebody special to design that course. And that somebody special ended up being Stanley Thompson. Now, Stanley Thompson was all in on this development. Him and Ada were friends. But in order for the funds to be raised completely, they needed to get a bank loan. And interestingly enough, Stanley Thompson went to the bank with Ada Mackenzie and said, my husband and wife, we are husband and wife, and we would like to build a golf course. And so it was only with the help of Stanley that they were able to get a bank loan in order to build Toronto Ladies Golf Club.
Wow. And I believe there's a quote in there that would be perfect time to bring up of what she had made about the banking.
Yeah, so she started off in the loans department at the Canadian Bank of Commerce, and she had made quite a name for herself in that industry and that business, which was also very hard in that time period. And she goes on to say, quote, "It was then I decided two things were here to stay: women in business and women in golf. Because from what I could see, women were as good as men at either of them."
That's amazing. Truly amazing. And she played golf, I believe, all the way till 68 years old.
She played golf well up until she was just not able to compete at the level that she wanted to compete at. But she played in every event that she possibly could. Once new events started to be developed and even new associations, she started to play in those. So she was a founding member of the Canadian Senior Women's Golf Association. They introduced a Canadian Women's Senior Championship outside of just the Women's Am. And they actually named the trophy for the Canadian Women's Senior Championship the Ada Mackenzie Trophy. So that's how important she was to the evolution of women's golf. She's recognized by Golf Canada. She's recognized by the Ontario, Golf Ontario. It was really special. And what else is special is that the Toronto Ladies Golf Club is turning 100 years old this year. So 1925 was when the course opened. 100
years. And I think another symbolic calendar moment for which is ironic, I believe, when Ada retired, I believe she retired at 72 years old, or she may have retired just before she passed away. And then ironically, the LPGA had officially started in Canada.
Yes, she passed away in 1973.
Right.
And the LPGA was starting to take shape in America, but there really wasn't much of women's professional golf in Canada. You saw a couple of events, super test events here and there, not much of a big field, but the women were excited to have the opportunity to travel the world and play the sport that they loved. And I always think of Sandra Post, who is Canada's first Canadian to join the LPGA Tour. And if it wasn't for Ada Mackenzie, looking at Sandra as a young girl, giving her the confidence, telling her that this is the sport that you love, you can do this on a professional level if you want to, Ada gave Sandra that confidence, and then Sandra went on to give all the other Canadian women the confidence that they needed to join the LPGA as well.
So what are some takebacks that you would think today, being a member of Golf Canada, who obviously, girls in golf, women in golf is such a growing industry, and the representation from the Brooke Hendersons and on is growing. What would you take back and mention to the future girls of Golf Canada, the trainees and the developmental girls out there, based on the story of what Ada had started? Not knowing, I don't think a lot of people know what she really started.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I look at Ada as Canada's first female super athlete, because not only did she play golf, but she also participated in other sports as well. So she was known as a tennis champion when she was at Havergal College. She competed in cricket. She played hockey. She played in every sport that she was able to, and loved them all. And it just so happened to be that golf was the one that she connected to the most. I think when you're looking at these young girls who are playing the sport today, they might not realize it, but all the opportunities that exist now are in thanks because of Ada and what she was able to do for women's sport. And not just her playing career, and not just for building Toronto Ladies Golf Club, but she was also a forerunner when it came to developing equipment and selling equipment, sporting goods to girls. She opened a sporting goods store so that there would be other women who could buy clothing and golf equipment.
You mentioned that. Tell us the story of why she started her own clothing store.
Yeah, this is a really good story, and I don't think that a lot of people are aware of it. But Ada was in the United States and playing at the U.S. Women's Amateur event, and it was raining really hard. And women at that time, they had to wear skirts, no shorts or pants or anything like that. And so she's wearing a very long wool skirt and obviously like probably a wool jacket and a button-up shirt. And it was raining. Now, if anybody knows wool, when it's wet, it just sucks in the water and it gets very, very heavy. So after every stroke that Ada is making, she has to roll up her skirt and the wool keeps stretching and she has to keep rolling up the skirt so that it's not dragging on the ground. And after that event, she had half of her wool skirt rolled up around her waist and the other half was dragging on the ground. And she came back home after that and said, this is absolutely ridiculous. There is no reason that women should not be able to buy quality goods, sporting gear, and equipment. And so she opened a ladies' apparel store and shop, and it was known as the Ada Mackenzie shop. The first store was opened up in Toronto, and it was such a success that she actually opened a second location in Port Carling and then a third location in Toronto as well. So what I'm holding here is it's actually a tea pack from the Ada Mackenzie shop. And inside you can see her locations here and then teas and ball markers. So this was quite something. She had women coming from all across the GTA coming to her store specifically to buy equipment and gear that they could wear on the golf course instead of, these heavy wool jackets and pants or skirts that were only available to select few.
She was a Renaissance woman, a superior athlete.
Yes.
And a trailblazing entrepreneur.
Exactly. And not only
breaking barriers in a time where there was almost nobody breaking barriers.
Exactly. And it's, looking back at her career now, it's amazing to see what she accomplished by herself. There was, no husband behind her. She was the leader and the women followed her. And she became, the face of Canadian women's golf for decades and decades. She even traveled overseas to represent or to be team captain for Canada when they went overseas and played in international events. She was somebody that everybody looked up to.
Amazing. I guess the only question I have left is if Ada was here today, available to play for the first official female professional tournament with the best golfers in the world, where do you think she'd stand up playing at her home course?
I think that if the players today had to play with the equipment that she was using back then, I don't think they would have had a chance against Ada.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, thank you very much. That was amazing. And thanks for sharing those stories and all that history. And I hope Golf Canada gets the message out there to the next generation of golfers and that we carry on Ada's legacy here at Mississauga Golf Club.